All right. So today we are talking all about reducing anxiety during the holidays. I know that many of you, many of us, I should say, have a lot of things happening, whether it's with family or whether it's feeling um, lonely during the holidays, feeling overwhelmed during the holidays. And there's so many different celebrations and activities coming up. So no matter what you do or don't celebrate, just this time of year can cause a lot of stress and tension. And it's interesting because oftentimes, as educators, having this break, it's a feeling of relief as well. So sometimes it's this um, double-sided situation in which there's that excitement, relief, oh, I got a break. And then there's the flip side of, oh, but what does that look like too? So I have eight. I have eight tips for you to take in to consider, and hopefully this helps you to maybe shift something, because when we shift one thing, when we make one small shift, it can really make big changes to help us to not only get through, but to enjoy the next um, remainder of remainder of 2021. So number one is to have a plan. So to have a plan as to what you want it to look like, and then also allow some room for flexibility. So having a plan, you determining what your time and energy is going to be spent on. So many times we allow others to decide this for us, and then it kind of becomes upsetting because we weren't part of that plan. It was determined for us. The more ownership that you take of how your time is going to look like, how that energy is going to be used, the better off you're going to feel. Okay. So number two is to know your limits. So knowing our limits, it means sometimes how many people can we be okay with being around for a certain amount of time? For those of us that are more introverted, this might look very different than, let's say, if you have a partner who's extroverted. You might need to make some compromise if they are really loving being around others, and you really know that you can only take an hour or two of being around too many people. So really taking that into consideration as you're making that plan. Also, when we talk about knowing your limits, thinking about food. I know that a lot of times, I know at least in my family, food is seen as a source of love and appreciation and togetherness. And sometimes we, made jokes about having hands that, you can like stretch. But think about, what are your limits? How do you feel after? Is that the same that you want to continue with each, if you're, meeting in person, with each event that you're going to, each celebration? So what are your limits? What is your limit as far as how much sleep do you need? How much, if you are going to have alcohol, what are your limits? So again, looking at this even before, this is part of making a plan, but knowing your limits even before you engage in those activities, it's so good to put some parameters on that, and it helps us to be able to say no when we need to, because we know and respect our own limits. And don't be afraid to let someone know that that is your limit, because sometimes people may want to test those boundaries, but once you know and are confident in your limits, it's going to be easier and easier to essentially stand up for them. The next one kind of goes along with having a plan on knowing your limits, but this is really prioritizing your well-being. prioritizing your well-being really is about prioritizing your emotional well-being, your physical well-being. It goes into making sure that you are not being a martyr, right? So that others can feel better, not overextending yourself, for a day or two, in which is going to deplete you for an entire week or two. I know that sometimes we can take on roles and projects because we want to nurture others. We want to show that we care about others. And it becomes such a big to do and such a big project. And what I've heard from some individuals is that when they do that, they actually feel resentful afterwards because it feels like they've given so much and they don't get maybe the support or the appreciation that they were expecting. So when I talk about prioritizing your well-being, you don't need to be a martyr. It's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to, again, this goes again to knowing your limits. What is your limit for being able to cook meals or have people over, or go to other, friends and families' homes, right? And if that's not something that you engage in, if you, have more of a quiet holidays, we'll be talking about that as well too. So stay tuned. All right. So the next one is, so I don't know about you all, but I have some family members in particular who we don't see eye to eye on some things. So whether it be politics or religion or other situations, that can kind of boil the pot. I learned this phrase from a former colleague, and it was so spot on. But what she said is smile and nod. So instead of arguing, smile and nod, because unless you truly feel like it's going to be of benefit to everybody involved at that moment, unless it's beneficial, it's probably going to raise anxiety. And during this time, we need to be so aware of that. And sometimes smiling and nodding or strolling is the best way to go. So smile and nod is the phrase. All right, the next one. This is a fun one, and if you have children or grandchildren, I would recommend having them help you out with this. So you're going to bring them on as your accomplice, okay? So what I would love to see is for you to learn a few new jokes, okay? Even if it's a joke that is going to get a groan and a moan. So the reason behind this is sometimes we want to keep the mood light. If there are more serious conversations happening in which there's tension being created, or there's some dynamics that are happening that you just feel like we need to shift this. Learn a few jokes just to even change the energy, right? The flow of that energy. So I got one for you. Are you ready? What is a pumpkin's favorite sport? What is a pumpkin's favorite sport? It is squash. Squash. I roll, right? But like I said, if you can bring in any kids and have them learn some, even better. Okay, so that would be another tip for reducing anxiety. This can also help your kids, if there's whether they're your children or just children who are in your presence, in your family, and so forth. A lot of kids experience the anxiety during the holidays as well, because they feel all of that pressure, right? And so bringing them in to help them lighten that energy can also be extremely beneficial. Now, if they don't want to do it, don't force them, right? They have to be a willing accomplice. Okay. The next one, and this is so important for whether or not you're spending time with family, or if you're home alone, or you're somewhere else that you weren't expecting to be. This applies for everybody. This is to let go of what you think it should look like. Oftentimes what happens is that there is this pressure and buildup of maybe seeing what, in the movies, everybody is, looking like, what it sounds like, what it's supposed to be, according to the Hallmark movies. Or there's this idea that comes through from, years ago, things were a certain way, or there were certain family members around, or certain people in our lives that are no longer there. And it can be really difficult to let that go sometimes and to be present in the moment. So what we can do is we can honor what maybe we have had in the past. We can honor what maybe we would like for it to look like in the future. But then to let go of that and really be present to, what can I do in the present moment to hold on to what I can be grateful for, what I can appreciate in this given moment, even if it doesn't look like what you feel it should look like, or what you would hope for it to look like. I know that this is a really big one because holidays can bring up a lot of past history. It can bring up some trauma responses for some. There's many things that can come up. And part of that is the pressure that we place on ourselves and the expectations that we hold of ourselves and of others. So letting that go, letting go of that pressure and those expectations and the shoulds can be so beneficial to really reducing your anxiety during the holidays. Okay. And then the final one is choose to make your own traditions. So what this can look like is a number of things. So maybe, for example, and I think about myself for this one. During, let's say, because we have Thanksgiving coming up in just a few days, we celebrate Thanksgiving in my family. Well, my family is not here this Thanksgiving. So right now, what I'm looking at is, what can my children and my partner and I do that looks nothing like what we have done before, right? And how can we make this unique and special to our family? So maybe, I don't know what it's going to look like yet. We still have to talk further about this. But for some reason in my mind, I was thinking, maybe we take some little mini marshmallows and we build like a volcano tower out of mini marshmallows. Like, that has nothing to do with traditional celebrations. It has nothing to do with anything that I've ever done before. But what if a new tradition is created? Or what if it's just different this year? So I want you to consider making your own traditions, whether it just lasts for this year or whether it continues year after year. Once you're able to let go of some of those shoulds and some of those expectations, it opens up an opportunity for you to try something kind of different, maybe even something out of the box that, again, can just bring some joy into that moment, which can release some of that stress. Okay, so I want you to consider, which of these are you going to try? Which of these are you going to try for reducing your anxiety over the remainder of this year? So I want to quickly go through it again. That is to have a plan, know your limits, prioritize your well-being and don't be the martyr. Smile and nod, right? And limit those unnecessary conversations. Learn a few new jokes, maybe with a little helper. Let go of what you think it should look like and choose to make your own traditions. Okay, so let us know which one of those you are going to try out. And wishing everybody a wonderful, wonderful week.